Return from the Abyss, Book 1. Chapter 11, Shadows of Politics. The throne room of Silver Crown had seen better days. Once, the Hall of Judgment had been a masterpiece of royal architecture. White marble columns rising 30 feet to support a vaulted ceiling painted with scenes of ancient heroes. Sunlight would stream through stained glass windows depicting the founding of Aylmore, casting rainbow patterns across polished floors. The throne itself, carved from a single block of granite and inlaid with gold, had been a symbol of strength and permanence. Now, the windows were shuttered against the afternoon sun because the light hurt King Thorian III's eyes. The polished floors were covered in thick carpets to muffle footsteps that aggravated his headaches. And the throne, that monument to royal power, held a dying man. Thorian looked every one of his 60 years and more. Gray hair hung lank and thin around a face that had once been called noble but was now just gaunt. His skin had taken on a yellowish cast that no amount of makeup could hide. When he breathed, it came in shallow gasps that rattled in his chest. The physicians had given him 6 months, maybe. The emergency council session had been called for the 3rd time this week. Around the table sat the kingdom's most powerful men. Generals, nobles, the master of coin, the high priest of the Church of Light. 14 faces, all bearing expressions that ranged from concern to barely concealed calculation. They were waiting for the king to die. Some with patience, others with poorly hidden eagerness. Duke Vasily Cremont stood at the head of the table, directly opposite the throne. He cut an impressive figure, 45 years old, but fit as a man half his age, with dark hair just beginning to gray at the temples in a way that added gravitas rather than age. His military uniform was immaculate, decorated with medals earned in a dozen campaigns against monsters and bandits. When he spoke, his voice carried natural authority. "Your Majesty," Cremont began, inclining his head respectfully, "honored council members, I wish I came before you with better news, but recent reports from our northern and eastern borders are troubling." He gestured, and an aide unfurled a large map across the table. Red marks dotted the border regions between Aylmore and the Zephyrus Empire. "In the last month," Cremont continued, "we've recorded 47 monster attacks along the border, 17 villages destroyed, over 2,000 civilian casualties. But what's particularly alarming is the pattern." He traced his finger along the map. 90% of these portal openings are occurring on Zephyrus's side of the border. The creatures emerge there and immediately move toward our territory. Marshal Eric Graven, a scarred veteran with gray in his beard and hate in his eyes, slammed his fist on the table. "It's obvious, isn't it? The Empire is using dark magic to open these portals deliberately. They're weaponizing monsters against us." "We don't know that for certain," Prince Elric cut in, his young voice tight with frustration. The heir to the throne sat at his father's right hand, his idealistic features twisted in disagreement. "There could be dozens of explanations for the pattern. Natural ley line convergences, ancient ruins affecting local magic, even natural," Graven's voice dripped with contempt. "Boy, I've fought on those borders for 30 years. This is no natural phenomenon. This is coordinated. This is war by proxy." "Don't call me boy," Elric said sharply, half rising from his seat. "I am your prince, and I will be addressed with enough." King Thorian's voice was weak, barely above a whisper, but everyone fell silent. The king's hand trembled as he raised it. "Elric, sit." The prince obeyed, though his jaw remained clenched. Thorian turned his tired gaze to Cremont. "Duke, do you have evidence of Zephyrus involvement?" "Circumstantial, Your Majesty, but compelling." Cremont pulled out a sheaf of papers. Our agents have reported unusual activity in the Empire, increased magical research at their academies, large purchases of rare materials known to be used in summoning rituals, and, most damning, several known cultists have been spotted near the border immediately before attacks. Cultists could be anyone, Elric protested. They could be from our own kingdom, trying to frame Zephyrus. For God's sake, this is exactly what someone would do if they wanted to start a war. My son makes a valid point, Thorian said quietly. His breathing had become more labored, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the room's coolness. A coughing fit seized the king. Violent, racking spasms that bent him double in his throne. Blood flecked his lips. Prince Elric was at his father's side in an instant, one hand on the old man's shoulder, calling for the physician. The doctor, a gray-haired man with viral energy that glowed faint green around his hands, rushed forward. The council members looked away, embarrassed by their king's weakness. All except Cremont, whose expression remained carefully neutral, but whose eyes tracked every detail with calculating precision. After 2 minutes, the coughing subsided. Thorian waved the physician away weakly, his chest heaving. "Continue the meeting." "Father, you should rest," Elric began. "I said continue." A flash of the old king's authority broke through the illness. Then, more softly, "We must decide." Cremont resumed his position at the head of the table. "Your Majesty, I propose we send an official delegation to Arkheim. Demand answers. Demand they cease whatever magical operations they're conducting near our border. If they refuse, or if we find proof of their involvement," he paused, "then we must consider all options." "You mean war?" Elric said flatly. "I mean defending our people." Cremont's voice was reasonable, measured. How many more villages must burn? How many more children must die before we act? Acting without certainty will kill thousands more. Elric stood, his hands gripping the table's edge. If we accuse Zephyrus of this with absolute proof, if we threaten them based on suspicion and circumstance, we could start a conflict that will consume the entire continent. "And if we do nothing," Marshal Graven growled, "the Empire will see our weakness and press harder. They'll test our borders until they find them undefended, and then—" "This is not about weakness or strength," Elric's voice rose, cracking with emotion. "This is about truth, about justice. My father taught me that a king must rule with wisdom, not fear. That we must—" "Your father," Cremont said quietly, and everyone went still at the dangerous softness in his tone, "is dying. When you sit on that throne, Prince Elric, you will learn that wisdom and idealism are luxuries. A king must make hard choices. A king must protect his people, even if it means making decisions that keep him awake at night." Elric's face went white, then red. "How dare you?" "He's right." Thorian's voice was barely audible, but it cut through the tension like a knife. The king's hand shook as he gestured weakly at his son. "Sit down." Elric sat, his jaw working silently, eyes bright with unshed tears of frustration. Thorian looked around the table, seeming to age another decade as he did. "I will not start a war based on suspicion." Each phrase came in gasps. "But I will investigate. Duke Cremont, you have permission to send agents, gather proof, real proof." He fixed Cremont with a gaze that still held a shadow of the king he'd once been. "If you find conclusive evidence of Zephyrus' involvement, bring it to me. Then we decide." He paused, breath rattling. "But no military action, no provocations, no incidents. Until I see proof, we maintain peace. Am I understood?" The council members murmured agreement. Cremont bowed low, his face the picture of humble obedience.
Of course, Your Majesty.
I live to serve the crown. This meeting is adjourned. The council filed out slowly. Elric remained at his father's side, one hand on the old man's shoulder. As Cramont passed the throne, he met the prince's eyes for a brief moment. The message was clear. I will be patient, but not forever. In the corridor outside, Cramont walked with measured steps, his aide falling into pace beside him. That went well, my lord. Better than expected, Cramont agreed quietly. The old man clings to his ideals even as they kill him. And the prince? He smiled without warmth. The prince is so desperate to be a good king that he fails to see sometimes a good king must also be ruthless. What are your orders, my lord? Cramont's smile widened. Send word to our friends in the shadows. Intensify the operations. More attacks, more evidence, more pressure. Within the month, I want Thorian to have no choice but to declare war. And if he still refuses? Then, Cramont said softly, perhaps his illness will take a sudden turn for the worse. The catacombs beneath Silvercrown were older than the city above. Ancient tunnels carved into bedrock by people whose names had been forgotten for millennia. They stretched for miles beneath the capital's foundations. Most entrances had been sealed centuries ago, but a few remained, hidden, forgotten, perfect for those who wished to move unseen. Cramont descended the stone stairs with practiced ease, a hooded lantern in one hand. The air grew colder with each step, thick with moisture and the smell of old earth. Water dripped from the ceiling in a constant rhythm that echoed off stone walls. The central chamber had once been some kind of temple or meeting hall. Crumbling pillars supported a ceiling lost in darkness. Strange symbols covered the walls. Not the common tongue, not even the old imperial script, but something far more ancient, something that seemed to writhe when viewed from the corner of one's eye. Myron the Dark waited in the center of the chamber. The cult leader stood perfectly still, his gaunt form draped in dark violet robes covered in intricate runes that pulsed with faint light. His bald head gleamed in the lantern's glow, and his eyes, completely black, lacking even the white sclera, fixed on Cramont with unsettling intensity. "Duke," Myron greeted, his voice like wind through a graveyard. "You come bearing news?" The council meeting went as predicted. Cramont set his lantern on a broken pillar. The king authorizes investigation, but forbids military action. He's clinging to peace. Peace. Myron's lipless mouth twisted in what might have been a smile. Such a fragile thing. So easily shattered. How goes your part of our arrangement? Myron gestured, and shadows coalesced into a small table bearing several objects. Abyss shards, their scarlet surfaces pulsing with trapped power. 32 shards delivered to our operatives along the Zephyrus border, each one carefully placed to open portals at optimal locations. The monsters that emerge are enthusiastic in their attacks on Aylmore settlements. And the evidence? Your soldiers performed admirably. The Zephyrus military regalia was convincing. The survivors report seeing Empire troops retreating after each attack. Myron's black eyes glinted with amusement. Of course, by the time any investigators arrive, those soldiers are long gone, their bodies disposed of, their uniforms burned, but the stories remain. Cramont nodded slowly. I need you to increase the frequency. More attacks, more visible. The king demands proof. I'll give him so much proof, he'll have no choice but to act. How many more villages must burn for your ambition, Duke? There was no judgment in Myron's tone, just curiosity. As many as necessary. Cremont's voice held no hesitation, no remorse. I am doing what's best for Aylmore. Thorian is weak. Elric is naive. Under their rule, this kingdom will crumble. I will make Aylmore strong again, united, ready for what's coming. What's coming? Myron repeated softly. Yes, you understand more than most, Duke. The ancients are stirring. The seal weakens. Soon, this world will face threats that make our little human conflicts seem laughably insignificant. Which is why Aylmore needs a strong ruler, not a dying idealist and his foolish son. And in exchange for my assistance in your rise to power, Myron stepped closer, his presence seeming to draw the shadows toward him. You promised me access. Once I am king, Cremont confirmed, you will have unrestricted entry to the royal archives. All the ancient texts about the abyss, the seal, the 9 heroes who created it. Everything we've collected over 3,000 years of history. And the artifact in the royal vault, the fragment they say came from one of the 9? Cremont hesitated. That may be more difficult. The church guards it closely. I have faith in your resourcefulness, Duke. Myron's smile widened, revealing too many teeth. After all, you're orchestrating a war between nations. Stealing one artifact should be simple in comparison. I'll do what I can. Cremont picked up his lantern. Continue your operations. In 1 month, I want the border situation so chaotic that even the pacifists in my court will demand action. Can you manage that? Oh, Duke, Myron laughed, the sound like breaking glass. You wound me. Of course I can manage it. The Order of the Crimson Star exists for moments like this. We've been preparing for a decade. Opening portals, weakening the seal, bringing the glorious darkness closer. His black eyes seemed to glow. War between humans is just the first step. When the ancients rise, when the old powers return, those who served their awakening will be rewarded. I'm not interested in your apocalyptic visions, Cremont said coldly. I want power in this world, not promises of some future catastrophe. Of course, Myron bowed mockingly. Forgive my enthusiasm. We each have our goals. I help you become king. You help me access the archives. A simple transaction between practical men. Cremont headed for the stairs, then paused. One more thing. There are hunters in Greyhaven, guild members, who have been causing problems for cult operations. I need them distracted. Ah, yes, the guild. Myron's expression soured. Thorn Gravelock's little band of idealists. They won't involve themselves in the coming war. The guild maintains strict neutrality. But they do love hunting cultists. He considered. I'll arrange something. Perhaps a few minor raids on border villages. Contracts that will draw their attention away from more important matters. Do it. I don't need them investigating too deeply before we're ready. Consider it done. Myron melted back into the shadows, his form becoming one with the darkness. His voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. Go, Duke. Become king. Start your war. And when the darkness rises, remember who helped you climb. Cremont ascended the stairs, his mind already working through the next steps of his plan. Behind him, in the ancient chamber, Myron stood alone, his black eyes reflecting no light. Fools, the cult leader whispered to the darkness. All of them. The Duke thinks he's using me. The guild thinks they can maintain neutrality. The kingdoms think they matter.
His lipless mouth split in a terrible grin. None of them understand. The seal is failing. The ancients wake, and the child of the abyss has already returned. He pulled a crystal from his robes, an ancient shard, larger than any Caden had yet absorbed, pulsing with corrupted power. Soon the harvest will begin. Soon Malkain will be free. And this world, he laughed again, mad and cold. The shadows swallowed his laughter, leaving only silence and the endless dripping of water in the forgotten depths beneath Silver Crown.
Thank you for listening. New chapters will be released daily on the channel. This audio material was produced exclusively for the Section 56 channel. All rights reserved. Have a nice day.